Tumia Bima Pap kwa kupiga nyota 150 nyota 51 alama ya reli au kwa WhatsApp tuma neno Bima Pap kwenda namba 0764166066 ujipatie bima.
Bima Pap, urahisi wa maisha.
Thank you, Mpoki. It's a very interesting question that you ask. I think let's first understand what the agencies do before we ask around the brick and mortar aspect of it. Agencies deliver the context to consumers based off what we call briefs from the clients or briefs from projects they're working on to a specific audience. So depending on the audience that they're trying to tap into, the media mix then determines where you go. So it could be a mix of both traditional and what we call the offline media and the digital media, or it could be actually all of it integrated into an experience. So we can't safely say that, one is going to die over the other. The reality in terms of the data within the marketplace shows that traditional media is still key, but there's growth in digital media, and hence it is important for us to have the fusion. Hence why we had this summit, because in reality is one can't live without the other in our current marketplace with the consumer trends as they are.
Okay, so how?
It's a very good question again. Sometimes you find clients who are very prescriptive. Our jobs as experts are to steer away from that prescriptive state of things and steer them in the direction that is important in the delivery of the objective. So the objective is what determines where you land. The objective determines where you land in terms of the output that we generate for you to reach the consumer segment or the businesses that you're trying to reach with your products and services. So the first part of the journey is to actually understand the strategy for the business and the objectives that this strategy is intending to drive for the business, work with the understanding of where you are as a business and where you need to be with the objective that you've given from a marketing perspective, and then craft what we call a marketing strategy to help you deliver on your business objective. So this whole process of understanding the need is very key before you start the journey of giving prescription in terms of the touch points. Like that's really at the back end of things, because you need to understand the business. Once you have an understanding of the business, you need to understand the consumer or the business that they're trying to target. Align that with the takeout from a creative perspective in terms of how do you meet the storytelling to get to the point of delivery of the output to that specific consumer. So we do an analysis of all these things through what we call brainstorms with both the clients, with the research teams, and everybody involved in the system, including the product teams, to understand how best to craft a solution that will work best for the brief that we have received. We then obviously take that strategy and deploy it now into an implementation part. The implementation then determines the touch points of how we deploy the communication task. So does it require for us to create content? Maybe, maybe not. Because sometimes the solution is not content specific. Sometimes the solution is actually a customer care solution. So if we understand that the customer is where you need to start the journey first, we give you a solution and say to you, perhaps you need to start by fixing your customer care, and we provide you the solution for customer care, and then now work backwards after you fix the bits of that to be able to drive bigger scale with the different touch points. So the fusion then comes in have we fixed the back end? Do we understand the product needs? Okay, who's the consumer? Is it a young person? Is it an old person? What are their consumer consumption habits? Once we have an understanding of their consumer consumption habits, then we see if there's need to integrate both digital and traditional, hence that fusion that comes in. And when I say traditional, I don't only talk about the traditional media channels. I'm talking about traditional platforms, including the shop, because sometimes the touch point is the shop and you may not have a physical shop. So how do we help you build an online shop, for example? Yeah, so the biggest point of contact usually for a consumer in Tanzania is your mobile phone before we even go into the tablets and everything else. Now, if we start talking about the mobile phone, we start talking about the mobile phone penetration. And then we start talking about use of content within that mobile space. If we start thinking again about the consumer space around how many people have smartphones versus feature phones, then we're not there yet. And so the scale up in terms of feature phones to smartphones and using new technologies that we have seen in the marketplace, such as 5G, can only be enhanced by, a mobile acquisition plan from perhaps the MNOs, or it could be advanced by the government, working with those MNOs to ensure that the handsets are actually accessible to the users, so that then we start talking about an integrated, faster way of growth for use of those mobile phones. Because again, a larger percentage of consumption actually does happen on the mobile phone. So if we're talking about growth of digital activity on the mobile phone, the biggest piece we need to fix is actually the handsets, making them accessible, making them cheap enough to be able to get to the right hands in the rural areas, to be able to penetrate and start having active conversations, not just from 2% of the population who are on perhaps smartphones, So that growth needs to happen as a consolidated effort. It cannot only happen from an agency perspective. We can help scale that communication, but it is something that is I think, in the pipeline for a lot of the telcos, because it's like, how do you grow as a telco if you don't have people, using using the handsets? You can use voice, but the biggest opportunity is actually in data. So data growth can only happen with the right handsets. So for us to extend and talk about digital transformation, let's start off, first of all, by working towards increasing the number of handsets that can actually activate digital activations beyond the feature phones. And then once we get to that point, or as we are getting to that point, is use a lot more digital solutions. And I don't think the digital solutions can only be anchored around just the mobile phone. The digital solutions could be accessing those closer to home by bringing the experiences closer to home. So if, for example, we don't have a mobile phone penetration high in a certain region, how do we take those digital experiences to them so that they feel the need and have the appetite to start integrating and using this digital? We need to show value in terms of the productivity that it gets, because the biggest barrier for adoption of the mobile phones is the cost. If I see productivity coming through as a farmer in there, I think then I start thinking, perhaps I need this mobile phone, because then I'm able to use this mobile phone to track the usage of my agricultural track that I have put in there, and I can track the productivity, and it's helping me. So it all connects. So it's not just a communication problem, it's actually a holistic problem that we need to solve as a country to accelerate that digital transformation. think the biggest piece, especially around this digital conversation, is the use of AI. We can't run away from the AI conversation. And we did have a very hearty, interesting chat yesterday during the digital summit. I think the biggest question is it going to replace us? Do we really need it? Will it help us survive? Or is it going to take over our jobs? But I think the thing about AI is it's been there. We've had AI for a while. It's just now that marketers are actually going to have access to use it for their advancement of their marketing campaigns. And the ones that actually quickly adapt to the use of AI will reap the benefits of productivity and move faster and be able to achieve their objectives a bit faster than somebody who's still relying on the old way of doing things. AI helps you get consumer data faster, manages to do that filter for the data faster. And so you're able to use those insights to change your marketing plan in a more quicker version than waiting for 5 months to get data to then make a plan, which is now already overtaken by time.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're already using them. So it's not safe to say that we're still lagging behind. There's some companies already in Tanzania that have already embraced AI and using them effectively. People have been using chatbots. That's AI usage. We've been using chatbots for a while for customer care engagement, just Q&As, and simplified way of doing things. There's obviously an opportunity to do a lot more with chatbots and use that information that we get to derive products and services that can then fit the requirements of these clients that are giving you, or these consumers that are giving you the insights via the chat conversations they're having with these bots. I think the biggest one I see that we need to think about is predictive analytics. Predictive analytics is where Mpoki is on Citizen. He knows Beatrice is reading Citizen on a daily basis, and she reads these certain segments. So you then queue content that is specific for me, so that you already anticipate my requirements and feed me the content that makes sense for me at that point in time. That utility is so key because, again, people are moving, they are advanced, they are moving faster. And so when you provide value in terms of the content or the service that you serve, it makes it easier for them to come back again and again and again. Yesterday, we had an interesting conversation with Kantar, who are our partner for research. So Kantar is a global agency that does research on various levels. So we had the pleasure of having one of the speakers from Kantar, Daniel Osman, the managing director for East Africa and the chief growth officer. He walked us through some trends from a media perspective. And some of the key trends are that, as it currently sits, the traditional media is still key in Africa. But if you want to effectively deliver content in Tanzania as it currently sits, Facebook is your best platform right now. What does that look like for the future? It means, there is growth. Because if you think and step back 10 years ago, we were still in a very traditional space where we were saying radio is king. No, not just the numbers. So there's the numbers. There are about 4 million people on Facebook in Tanzania. But beyond the numbers of the 4 million people that sit there is the effectiveness of driving your conversion as a marketing person. So Facebook is actually delivering effectiveness better than the traditional channels. Shocking, right?
A lot of business.
which is very interesting because I think a lot of people assume that everybody is sitting on Twitter or TikTok, but a lot more people still sit on Facebook for deeper conversations that enable you to recommend this thing to a friend because it's a trusted circle of friends that are sitting on Facebook. Okay. So this is the aspect of marketing that people completely forget, that yes, there'll be newer platforms that are coming on board. That doesn't mean you ignore them. It means learn how to utilize them better. There will be new platforms coming. I mean, when you start thinking about the AI space, every day there's something new coming. Indeed. I cannot tell you that I know what AI function will be happening in the next 10 years, but I can definitely see that there will be a shift in how we use that technology from a communication perspective in terms of the touch points that we integrate with. It's definitely clear that digital transformation is the path that we are in. How we get to the end of that in 10 years' time is still a learning path for all of us. So when we say use AI, it doesn't mean you stop using your creativity. The reality of what AI is, it's dependent on you as a human being to put some input. So garbage in, garbage out. The people who will harness creativity and make this machine learning happen faster will actually tap into the growth of this machine learning to enable them create content that is meaningful. Because if you leave it to the machine to create the content for you without giving proper instructions, because it's instruction based, you will not get the output that is necessary for whatever prompt you put in. So the reality of creativity requires that there will be a need for what I call an intervention between the digital space and the reality of the physical space, which is this creative person contextualizing it for the machine to understand that in Tanzania, a market is not the same market as Lagos in Nigeria. So I need to be very specific as a creative person, and I'm putting in the prompt to say, the market we will have X and X and X versus Y, which is in another market. I will need to have a person who is wearing this kind of attire. I will need to have this kind of context. And if it doesn't, we will still need to go back and do the physicality part of it, which is actually the photography or videography, to infuse it into that reality, to make it still resonate. Remember, whatever you put out, you still need to test. I go back to the research part. So if I test it against you as a consumer and it's not meeting the threshold for actual flighting, then I need to go back and recreate it. What AI does for you, it gives you an opportunity to test it faster. So you can do the concept testing faster and then go back and now do the deeper creative aspects of it that are missing from the feedback that you're getting from the consumer. Yeah, so I think the three things that we pride ourselves in is data. To that extent, I call it the data toolbox. For me, a data toolbox is key, and the data toolbox requires us to have partners that enable us to be able to get the insights for consumers, the insights for the market, the insights for even products and the landscape, the market landscapes, not just Tanzania perspective, but across internationally as well, because we do have clients that come from other markets. So the data toolbox for me requires me to have a partner that enables that for me. And so we have Kantar, who we now have a partnership with to enable that data toolbox sitting there. That doesn't mean that we will not use the insights that we derive from the platform. That doesn't mean that we will not use the insights that we get from other places, for example, our clients, other research companies that they use. But we pride ourselves in the fact that we use data and we're able to fashion our content and our communication out of data. We also pride ourselves in terms of innovation. So to that extent, the products and services that we have internally, such as creative, require for creative innovation. You will not see what we put out replicated or a copy from somebody else or a reference from anywhere else. We want to keep it fresh. We want to give solutions that are integrated with the reality of the marketplace, with the reality of the data of what it said to us. So our creative innovation pipeline requires for our teams, even before they actually start the creative process, to use data to be able to say, this is where we want to land from an output perspective, but this is what the consumer is saying to us. And so if this is what the consumer is saying to us, this is the need, the emotional need that meets the requirements for that creative innovation, a cut-through idea that can then be used to scale. The third part of our services is obviously technology. We started off as a technology company. Our genesis was a technology company, which then morphed into what we call a digital marketing company. We are now what we call a hybrid full marketing service agency, because we have media, which is not just traditional media, it's online and offline media. We are also doing PR in a differentiated way. We're doing PR sustainability. We are doing what we call experiential, but immersive experiential experiences anchored around the technology piece as well. And the data, because you want to know what you did with experiential. You just don't want to go out there and say, I sampled 2 people. Yeah. You sampled 2 people, but I don't know whether you sampled 2 people. I need to get the feedback to understand the ROI that you've driven from the sampling activation that you've driven. We also do strategic partnerships with others. So we like to build things that are futuristic. We will be doing a couple of announcements in the next couple of months that actually will step change that piece around content, around advertising specifically. We work with our sister companies, our subsidiaries, to create some of those solutions. So keep your ears peeled. It starts with us as marketers and how we build our communication plan. We need to start being more strategic as opposed to tactical. And this is my message yesterday from my Tanzania Marketing Summit. So how does everything fit the whole? If everything fits the whole, how does it fit within the policy requirements, for example, of the company? How does it fit within the policy requirements of what the government is doing? And how are you helping the government actually advance some of these things? So holistically, we need to start thinking strategic and start thinking about the strategic partnerships that we can build in terms of collaboration, because going it alone sometimes is not the way. You can actually go further with others. So build your strength internally through enhancing your strategies, but also build your skill with collaborating with others and perhaps even partnering with others who are not necessarily within your space, because then that gives you breadth in terms of skill. I think the other biggest piece is on sustainability. A lot of people talk about sustainability, but what is sustainability from your business perspective, and how are you bringing that to life? I'm here for it. Thank you, Mpoki.